Hello, everyone. I thought I would review the book Anna Karenina, which I just finished. 800 pages is a really big book. I actually started the book back in June, but it took me a while to finish it because I had already seen several film adaptations of it, so I kind of already knew what was going to happen, so I didn't really feel as much suspense to keep on reading on a regular basis, so I read some other books in between. But I finally finished it, and overall, I enjoyed the book. Um, Now, some of you might be surprised to know that Anna Karenina is basically about two characters. There are two protagonists, which a lot of times in the movie versions, the second protagonist is cut out. It's obviously about Anna Karenina, who is an aristocratic Russian woman who has a fine, upstanding reputation, but then she ends up having an affair with this soldier named Vronsky, and ultimately said affair ruins her reputation and it drives her practically insane by the end of it. Of course, this will be a spoiler review, and then of course the second character is a character named Levin, who is also an aristocrat, and his story in some ways is not as dramatic, but it's basically about him finding his faith and his struggle with his own soul. His conflict is much more of an internal one, and then of course you have Anna Karenina who is having the affair with Vronsky, and in many ways you can sympathize with her, but at the same time you also obviously have some negative emotions towards her at the same time because she's having an affair, which is obviously not the morally correct thing to do. But at the same time, you can tell that she's been stifled in the life that she lives in, that her husband is somewhat cold and unfeeling towards her, and therefore you can kind of understand why she is making the decisions that she is making, even though you may ultimately disagree with her. And even now this is going to be a major spoiler, but even though I already knew what her ultimate fate would be, because towards the end of the story she becomes very paranoid, and she even starts saying that Vronsky, who she's been having the affair with, doesn't truly love her. She becomes very paranoid, and ultimately, in order to somehow to prove to make a point, she decides to commit suicide by jumping in front of a train, and which was an impulsive move on her part, and she she basically destroys herself because of her paranoia and guilt, even though in many ways her paranoia was unfounded. And but even though I already knew what was going to happen, I couldn't help but feel a deep sadness and sympathy for Anna because I had spent so much time reading about her, hearing her thoughts, and in fact, there's this one line which I really loved. Is probably my favorite line in the book that I would very much like to read to you, which goes, and this is when she jumped in front of the train. And the candle by the light of which she had been reading that book, filled with anxieties, deceptions, grief and evil, flared up brighter than ever, lit up for all that had once been in darkness, sputtered, grew dim, and went out forever. Now, that's probably my favorite line in Anna Karenina because it really does describe so poignantly her psychological state and the experiences that she's gone through, and that now that candle will be out forever because she has basically destroyed herself in many ways. So it's a very tragic tale in that regard. And then, of course, you have the character of Levin, who at the beginning, which his storyline is really separate from Anna Karenina's because they only meet once towards the end, and they're kind of in the same social circle, but they don't really meet very often or interact very often. So you could almost make Levin an entire. If you were to adapt Anna Karenina to a movie, you could almost make Levin an entirely different movie without Anna Karenina at all. But at the beginning, he's spurned by this woman who he had a crush on, and therefore he feels really humiliated, and he feels like she'll never take him back, or if he feels that if she accepts him, it will only be because of pity. And but ultimately he ends up reconciling with her and marrying her. Then towards the end, it's really about his struggle with finding God and faith, which he ultimately finds in the end after the many struggles that he's been through. And that's another thing that I really love about Tolstoy is that really has a deep sense of morality and a deep sense of spirituality and Christianity. And I would say that when it comes to philosophical and theological issues, I probably agree with Tolstoy more than any other writer. And when it comes to messages and themes, I'm probably very similar to Tolstoy in that way. Not really in terms of writing style, because Tolstoy has, for the most part, a rather plain writing style, although there are patches of poetic brilliance, but he uses them sparingly, which in some ways it makes them more powerful when they do come along, even though my style is very different in that regard. But overall, I loved Anna Karenina for all of those reasons, despite the fact that I knew basically what was going to happen.